Hello, it's Monday. The word for you today, here December the 2nd. Our lesson today is don't give place to pride. Our scripture passage is 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 5. It says, not that we are competent to claim anything for ourselves, but our competence comes from God. This is Paul talking. Basically, what he's saying is that anything we do good comes from God. God gives us abilities and skills. He gives us talents, and he does that so that we can serve him and we can serve others. And he also gives us opportunities to use those abilities and skills. When we start thinking that, I'm pretty good, I can do this, that's usually when we're about to fail. There are things that we can do, and we may do okay. But anything that we accomplish that's going to have any lasting impact, it's because God empowers us to do it, and He has set it up for us to do it. There's an old saying that says, give credit where credit is due. That's what Paul is doing here when he says, not that we are competent to claim anything for ourselves, but our competence comes from God. What Paul is saying is anything I've done well, it's because God is doing that. So let's just talk about that a little bit. God used a bunch of nobodies. Take Moses, for instance. Remember, God had a plan for Moses. He wanted to free the children of Israel from Egypt. Moses says, I can't because I don't speak well. And he tried to get out of it, but God says, no, I want to use you. Gideon says, I can't because I'm the least of my clan. I'm a nobody, God. I can't do what you're asking me to do. Isaiah says, I can't because I'm a man of unclean lips. Jeremiah says, I can't because I am but a youth. I'm too young. God, you can't use me. See, there's a time when we have too much confidence in ourselves, and there's a time when we have too little confidence in God. And in both cases, it's really pride. Too much confidence in ourselves is a prideful thing. I can do anything. And no, we really can't. And then not trusting God is pride in that, no, God, you cannot do that. And if I'm not able to do it, then I know you can't do it through me. So how can we be sure that we are not prideful? In our lives, as we go through, how can we be sure that we're not prideful? See, there's a difference between taking pride in your work. That's a good thing. Be sure that you do a good job and you have the pride to do that. But being prideful means, look what I did. I'm really something. So how can we be sure we're not prideful? Well, the first thing, ask God to show you your pride. In Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24, the psalmist says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. What is the psalmist David saying? Saying, God, search me, know my heart. You know when I'm prideful. Sometimes I don't see my pride, but you do, Lord. So show me. When I am being prideful, show me, reveal to me my pride. And then the second thing, see yourself as God sees you. Allow God to show you you. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7, Paul's writing, says, for who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you didn't receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not? What is Paul saying? He's saying, all of us, anything we've done, we have received. We've received it from God. God could cut off our oxygen in an instant, and we could do nothing. Our muscles, our strength could go away in a second, and we wouldn't be able to do anything. So we may boast about what we're doing, but it's only because God allows us to do it, or God enables us to do it. See ourselves as God sees us. Not as somebody who is so talented and so skillful, but rather a servant of God. And then consider yourself a servant. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 5 says, for we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For we do not preach ourselves. In other words, we don't lift ourselves up, but we lift up Jesus Christ as Lord, and we are servants for his sake. So how can we not be prideful? First of all, ask God to show us what we're really doing. Are we truly giving him the praise and the glory, or are we wanting it for ourselves? And then see yourself as God sees you. Allow God to show you what we're really like, and then consider yourself a servant. Many of you remember Muhammad Ali. He was one of the greatest boxers there ever was. If you remember, he was very prideful. He had a lot of sayings about himself, and he called himself the greatest and all of that. One time he got on an airplane. He's on the airplane, he's sitting in his seat, and the stewardess comes through telling everybody to fasten their seatbelts. She comes to him and said, "Sir, would you please fasten your seatbelt?" He said, "Superman don't need no seatbelt." And she said, "Sir, please fasten your seatbelt." He said, "Superman don't need no seatbelt." She said, "Sir, Superman doesn't need a plane either. Fasten your seatbelt." You know, he had to see himself as she saw him. He was a man who needed to fasten his seatbelt. And if we will allow God to show us, it can keep us from tripping and falling sometimes. Don't give place to pride in your life, because if you do, it's not going to taste good sometimes. Have a good weekend. Have a good day.